Hello, hello, hello. It's Teresa, and I am so glad whenever I get the opportunity to spend some time with my father's children. It is really all good when we get a chance to be together and we get a chance to, communicate with one another, even when it's over the internet and when it's over Zoom or any one, of the communication softwares that we have out there today. So, the topic of today's webinar is wealth building. Our job is going to be all about gaining that revenue so that we can build wealth, and not wealth just for our sakes, not wealth for us so that we can just live well. We want to build wealth for our children and our children's children. Our goal is going to be generational wealth. So I'm going to probably take maybe a half an hour of your time. I don't want to take up too much of it, but I want to interest you in this whole wealth building life. Okay. So I made a presentation. There's going to be some screen sharing. So I want you to follow along with me as we go through the pillars of wealth and the principles of wealth and how we go about starting from where we are today to traveling along the road to prosperity until we hit that place called wealth. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen with you because I want you to see exactly what it is that I have got going on here. So now this presentation again is brought to you by my academy, the Wealth Builders Academy. And Wealth Builders Academy is a school that teaches the phases of wealth building incrementally. So I offer mini courses. So there is one to a 30-day guide to getting your savings and your spending in order. I have a course on debt reduction. I have a course that allows you to determine whether or not you're adequately insured. So I have a course on each of the principles of wealth. And then I have a 12-week live course that I run in January. And that's going to go over all of the principles, and that's going to really get your entire house in order so that you'll be ready from, day one to start your wealth building plan. So this is actually an overview because, everybody can't, is not going to be able to take the course. Everybody is not going to, be able to participate. And so this is going to give you at least some steps that you can take in the meantime until you can get to where you want to be. This will give you those steps to take, that you can take now. So a little bit about me. Again, my name is Teresa Marcia, and I have spent the last 25 years in corporate taxation, and I work primarily in the financial services with high net worth individuals. And so what we do is we work with people who are already pretty wealthy, and we allow them to maintain their wealth and increase their wealth. So once you get to a certain level, it's all about divesting and making sure that your investments are paying off and really kind of spreading it all out. In order to gain wealth, what I have found is that most of the wealthy people that I work with have gained wealth by being very, very strategic and by doing one thing very, very, very well. Whether they're artists, whether they're surgeons, whether they work in real estate, whatever it is that their specialty is, they do one thing and they zero in on it and they do it to the best of their ability, which allows them to excel and command a higher rate. Does that make sense? So if you spread yourself too thin and you're the proverbial jack of all trades and you end up being a master of none, then it's going to be limiting on the amount of money you can command because most people know that amount. It's when you become a specialist in something or you hone a skill to where you rise to the top of your, field, then you can start commanding the higher rates. Yes? Okay, so Wealth Builders Academy is going to help you shatter the barriers to wealth building and allow you the information so that you will know what the paths are. And so you can determine what path it is you want to take. So my welcome is just that. I want you to now begin the path to creating a better financial future. I want this for all of my people. I want this for all of my father's children. And now listen, this is not necessarily just the way the world does it, because we are spiritual people. I am Pentecostal. I am a woman of God, and I revel in that. I glory in being a daughter of the King. I glory in being a part of the kingdom. And I don't do anything that sacrifices my morals, my standards, or my values. And believe me, there have been many situations where I have been asked to, fudge this or, dig into some gray areas. And I don't do anything that upsets my spirit. I don't do anything that could call my character into question. And so when we look for financial advisors, we want to make sure that these are people that we can trust, because we don't want to end up in a situation like the Bernie Madoffs where, you're investing your money and it's all some kind of crazy shell game. Not that you can trust everybody who says that they're, a child of God, but I digress. That's for another webinar. So the ultimate goal when you leave this webinar, however, is that you will begin to stop worrying about how your bills are going to be paid. That's one of the definitions of financial freedom. If you could allow yourself to not be overly stressed to say, well, my rent is due, rent is due every month. So you pay it one month and now you're struggling because you try to figure out how you're going to pay your rent the next month. That happens a lot here where I live. I live in New York, and rents are so high. I mean, they praised us because we raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And a lot of states where the minimum wage is a lot lower, like in the South, they're looking at us like, boy, you must be rich. But they don't realize that a one bedroom is $2,000 here. And so the high cost of living makes it almost impossible not to have a minimum wage that reflects that. So, but we still have people who, even though they make $15 an hour, still struggle to pay their monthly bills. And this is not monthly bills, they live in mansions. These are just your regular average monthly bills. It's ridiculous. And so we have to figure out a way to where we can end that, because that just puts a lot of stress and a lot of strain on you that you don't necessarily need. We have a health crisis with the coronavirus now. We don't need any additional stress and strain. We try to alleviate some of that burden now. We also want you to start thinking about retirement. So again, once you stop worrying about how you pay your bills, we want you to start looking at how well you will do once you leave the workforce. Are you able to? Can you imagine a scenario where you can actually stop working for income? And if you can't, well, then it's time for you to start thinking about that, especially if you're in your 40s. If you're in your 40s, 50s, God forbid you're in your 60s and you still have no discernible way of being able to let go of your income, it's a situation that we have to really look at, because at some point you won't have a choice. At some point you will have to leave the workforce. Or if you are somehow separated from your job, it'll be that much more difficult for you to find another job. And so you may just be forced into an early retirement, and you want to at least have an idea of where you are, what you can expect, what you should anticipate. And if you can start preparing for that now, then all the better. We also want you to be able to spend more time with family and friends. We sacrifice a lot of our family time because of this, because we're worrying about how we're paying our bills. We are working 2 and 3 jobs. We're working 3 and 4 shifts at a job. And so we're sacrificing our family and our friends for money. And that has to stop. I recently did a live video on Facebook because I do know a lot of people who they sacrifice their friends and their family for money. They sacrifice that time so that if they're not, struggling with multiple jobs, then they're struggling trying to make a way and create a business and become entrepreneurs. But, you won't be, time is the one thing we can't get back. And so you have to make sure that you spend your time wisely. And more often than not, when you look back over your life, you will be more likely to regret the time you did not spend here. and not regret the time that you did not spend. Nobody ever says I should have worked a whole lot more. Oh, I should have had another 4 jobs. Most people say, you know what, I wish I would have spent more time with my family and friends. I wish I would have been available to watch my children grow up. I wish I would have paid more attention to my spouse. I wish we could have had more vacations and more together time, and not this forced together with the coronavirus where we're literally forced to be in an enclosed space with each other, but that we are in doing things where we can enjoy each other's time and enjoy each other's spaces. So those are the things that I really want you to be able to get out of. This is the whole reason why I started the Wealth Builders Academy, so that you can actually achieve those things, because we spend so much time working and so much time grinding that we don't get a chance to live our lives. And we have our nose to the grindstone for 10, 12, 15 hours a day. And all of a sudden one day we look up and we're 65 and we've missed out on our entire lives. It's unacceptable. All right, so what are your goals? Let's talk about that. That's always exciting, because this allows us to hope. This allows us to visualize. This allows us to think about what would happen if everything we did worked. If there was no barrier to dollars, if there was no barrier to time or space, what is it that you would want? Do you want to buy a house? Let's not even think about, I only make minimum wage. Houses cost $500,000. Let's not think about the house. Let's think about, is that what you want to do? Because that God, he can make anything happen. We were just looking at the girl on Ayanla, the girl who was, I think she worked in Walmart, and she won this multi-million dollars. So he could turn it around for you just like that, but you have to be prepared for it. Unlike said girl at Walmart who wasn't prepared and who basically, we're going to talk about this a little bit later when we get to the psychology of money. So let me not talk about it now, but she didn't have time to kind of do the inner work that she needed to do in order to make good decisions when she did win all of that money. And as a result, she is almost broke now. But that's another conversation. That's a conversation for the psychology of money, where we understand money scripts and we understand the emotions that we attach to money, and we deal with them so that these goals can actually become a reality for us. So let's think about that house. I want you to visualize the house you want to be in. How many floors does it have? Does it have a pool? Is it a beach house? Is it a lakefront house? Is it a house? Is it in the mountains? Is it in the country? Is it in the city? Maybe you like a townhouse that's in the city somewhere. This is a chance to let your mind run wild. I want you to visualize that very house that you want to be in. You might even want to create a vision board so that you can have your goals in front of you and you can see it every day. There's power in our mind. God gave us the power of a sound mind. He allows us to be able to visualize. And so we sometimes should be able to put these things up so we can see it every day. And that helps us. It helps to solidify it for us in our mind. So again, we want to talk about retirement. It's never too early to start. I know people, when you're 20, maybe early 30s, you think retirement is never going to come. And I get it, because you are like me and you kind of feel like I'm too young. Well, I'm in my 50s, so I already know that I need to start planning for retirement. But there are a lot of people who feel like, I really don't need to think about that. That's going to be for another day. And believe me, it comes up faster than you would wish it did sometimes. And investments. This is going to be a cornerstone of the wealth building plan. You must invest your money because your money has to begin to work for you. There will become a time when you will not work for your money as hard as your money will be out there working for you. And that is the linchpin in this whole program, is to identify investments that speak to us, identify investments that work with our level of tolerance of risk. We want to get into, the rich people have access to investments that we have never even heard of. I mean, there are so many different types of investments. There are limited partnerships. Entrepreneurship is still the best investment. Investing in yourself and your own talents and abilities so that you can create your own course and chart your own course is always going to be an amazing investment. Although there are some people who really don't have the entrepreneurial spirit, and that's fine. I have worked with lots of people who were multimillionaires and who were not entrepreneurs. Now, they, for the most part, they specialized in an area that was very high paying. So they were maybe surgeons and, plastic surgeons, because that's a cash business. That usually they get a lot of dollars in because, people always want to look good, or they're maybe in the legal field, they're maybe, attorneys or judges. So if they are employees, they're definitely, captains of industries, or they're CEOs of, publicly traded organizations. So they have actually risen in their career. And that's what I was telling you about, being able to focus and do that one thing that you do so well that people can't help but pay you an arm and a leg to do it. So yeah, we're going to definitely talk about investments. Now, here are the steps to wealth building. And these are those things that I see in every person who has built and accumulated and are preserving their wealth. So the multiple streams of income, and I'm sure you've heard of this already. If you have been at all a part of the wealth building genre, you have heard of the fact that we have to grow our income. We have to develop multiple streams of income. If you only have one stream, say you have one job, if you do not have that one job, like so many Americans have experienced lately with the coronavirus that has shut so many of our activities down, if you lose that stream of income, then you've lost everything. You have nothing else to fall back on. But if you have more than one, if you have some rental income, if you have investments, if you have a side hustle, or if you have a second job, if you have additional streams of income, then if one falls aside, then you always have others that you can kind of pick up on. Being an entrepreneur, we talked about that earlier. That is where you put your own skills to the test and you actually become your own business. And by the way, tax planning isn't on here, but that's a part of this whole owning your own business. Tax planning is a very, very important part of financial planning. That should be, as a matter of fact, that should be that estate planning. But this is about wealth building, not necessarily financial planning, but that all works to increase the amount of money you hold on to, right? Because you can make a lot of money and it comes in that door, but then it goes out the back door called taxes. And so you want to make sure that you keep that tax door closed as firmly as you possibly can so that your money doesn't start sliding out. So, making sure that you have a tax preparer who is knowledgeable about all the tax laws, who can legally get you all of the deductions that you are entitled to, is going to be one of our first orders of business. I talk about this every time I give a seminar, a webinar, every time I give a talk. I make sure to tell people that building wealth is not a solo sport. It's not something you do all by yourself. It's a team effort. And so if you want to be wealthy and you want to accrue wealth and you want to maintain wealth and preserve it, you're going to need a team of people behind you. So you are going to need someone who specializes in investments. You need an investment broker. He's going to bring things to your attention that you would have no idea exists. You will need a tax preparer, someone who is well versed in the tax code. That person will help you to get legitimately all the tax breaks you're entitled to. Make sure you're taking all the deductions you should have. And he's going to guide you when you should maybe, recognize losses if you have these investments, when you shouldn't, when you should. He will advise you. And when you go to a commercial place like an H&R Block, they look at your W-2 and they're looking back, right? So they're looking at the past year. Your tax planner is going to be looking forward. He's going to look at your situation and he's going to say, okay, this is what we're going to do for next year so that we can take advantage of all of the tax laws. By the time you prepare your taxes, you're preparing it for the previous year. It's already too late to make any changes or adjustments. So what you have to do is you have to start being forward thinking instead of backward thinking. Okay, so we talked about the investment in securities, make it automatic. If you have a 401k plan at your job, please be a part of it. Please have contributed up until the maximum. please, 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 that is money, especially if your company offers a match. That is money that you will be leaving on the table if you do not take advantage of it. If you are an entrepreneur like I am, and you pay for your own health insurance like I do, then you also want to maybe look into an HSA. Now, if that's a health savings account, which allows you to put away money for healthcare, and sort of and allow it to grow tax free. Now, you have to have a high deductible health insurance plan in order to have an HSA. So if you are fairly healthy, then that may be the way to go for you. Especially a lot of my younger workers, I steer them in that direction if they don't have, you know, any kind of long-term illnesses, or if there's nothing kind of in their family that may creep up. I definitely steer them towards that, because the HSA grows triple tax free. It's money you contribute tax free, it grows tax free, and when you take it out, you take it out tax free. So that's one of the best ways that you can utilize your pre-tax dollars. Okay, home ownership. What is there not to love about home ownership? Home ownership allows you to own a piece of that rock. You know, they're never going to make any more land. So the people who own it. And land switches owners very regularly. You know, title changes hands in America every single day, millions of times a day. So you can jump in there, get you a piece of the rock. You can do it if you don't. I mean, okay, so now I'm in a rental. I'm in a rental because it works for me, but I also own a home that I rent out. So it's not to say that you have to buy a house to live in. I live in a city. So it's, you know, it's very cost prohibitive for us to be owning houses if you want to live in the city limits. But you can live in the city and then own a house that's outside of the city, rent it out. Hopefully you're going to be renting it for more than your mortgage. And so you'll have that additional stream of income. You know, and then you'll always have something to fall back on, right? We always talk about that plan B. You know, if anything happens, you know, you always have a house to fall back on. You will always also have something that you can leave to your children. And so in all of the modules, I think in all of the courses that I offer, I talk about home ownership, you know, getting your credit ready for home ownership, how to own it, in what name title should be, and how homes should be titled in order to make the best use, and how to allow it to be transferred to your heirs should something happen to you, to make that process sooner, because none of us want to have to go through probate. We want to make sure that our wills and our estates are fully functioning, and that we have a up and running estate plan, because you just never know what's going to happen on a daily basis. So these are the steps to wealth building, right? Number 6, the most important part, change your mindset. Change your mindset. I mean, the fact that you're on this webinar tells me that you are changing your mindset. The fact that you are here with me today, it tells me that you are interested in making sure that you can learn as much as you can about the wealth building process, so that you can take the steps that you need to take in order to make it happen. Now, you may not be able to put all 5 or 6 of these in place tomorrow, but you can start taking the steps that you need to take moment by moment. Yeah? Okay. So I'm going to go to this, and then I'm going to quickly stop sharing my screen, because I also want to talk to you now. We have sort of left the part of the webinar where we do an overview of the wealth building process. And now I'm going to jump into the individual pieces of us accruing wealth, because there are some blocks that we have to home ownership, not home ownership, to wealth building. And I'm going to get into that now. So back to the screen sharing, because I know that you guys don't want to have to listen to me all the time. So let's go back to this screen share. Okay. So the common barriers to wealth building are threefold. And one is under earning, which is very common, especially among women. Number 2 is overspending. That applies to everybody. And number 3 is chronic debting. A lot of men have more debt than women, but women have longer periods of being indebted. So women tend to carry debt longer, but men tend to have more debt. So we want to actually put our foot on the neck of this right here, because this will never allow you to have traction in your finances. So I guess we'll go over them in the way that I have laid them out. So we'll start with under earning. Under earning is you having a tolerance for a low wage. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, this does not mean that you are lazy. That does not mean, when people say that, you're an under earner, that kind of calls to mind people who sit on the couch all day and they are just being lazy. They don't want to do anything. They want to watch TV and play video games. That's not what I'm talking about when I talk about you being an under earner. The under earners that I talk about work a lot. As a matter of fact, they work too much. If you are earning less than you should be. So I know women who have 2 and 3 degrees who, still work in low paying jobs, or who work in retail, or, who work at some way below their standards. And it's not something that they want to do. So, and when I say something they want to do, what I mean is, if you want to work for Greenpeace, right? You're a PhD, and you decide you want to work for Greenpeace, maybe making sure that people have clean water. Hopefully we'll send you to Flint. But if you want to do that, and you're working for a stipend, or you're working for like some nominal amount of money, because I don't think Greenpeace really pays you, then that is a conscious decision, and that is a choice. And that we can all understand and respect. However, if you are multi-degreed, if you are very skilled at what you do, and you just work at Rite Aid because you, not to say anything about people who work at Rite Aid, because I'm sure it's a wonderful place to be. But if you got, I think we could all agree that if you have 3 degrees, you don't necessarily want to be a cashier at Rite Aid. But because I don't think that's what you went to college all those times for and accrued all that student loans. But because you like it, and or because you are afraid to sort of go out into the world and try for other jobs, and you don't want to go for the higher positions because you've gotten comfortable. People don't like to be uncomfortable, so they don't necessarily try for the advanced titles. They don't really try to make lateral moves, maybe to move up in another organization, because they kind of like where they are, and they feel good where they are, and they know the people, and they know the routine. And but the problem is that they don't ever, their pay never rises. And when your pay doesn't rise, it affects your ability to save, because you're just not making the kind of money you would need to put it to work, right? Also, there are people who devalue themselves and they give away their time and knowledge. So that works when you are a professional person who, or maybe not even a professional person, but you're someone who has a specific skill that other people can use. Usually it falls in like decorating. You do taxes. Come tax season comes, everybody comes to you. Can you help me with my taxes? Can you help me do my taxes? Can you show me this? Or if you're a decorator, if somebody's having a party, can you decorate for me? Can you bake a cake? If people know you can cook, they'll ask you to cook for every single thing. These are, most of the times, the people in our lives who know we have a skill, they come to us, and what happens is we don't charge them what we should charge them considering our skill set. I'm not saying, now you want to charge your mother to bake her cake, but I'm saying, your girlfriends who may be having a party, or, someone wants you to do their taxes. I'm saying, if you have a professional skill and you are, allowing it to be spread among your friends and families, you should be charging them. You should be charging them. You still have to make your student loan payments. And I really think that it's disrespectful for everybody to come to you and ask for discounts. I think that it's disrespectful for people to come to you and ask for deals, and ask for, for you to do things for them for free, knowing that you had to go to school in order to get this skill. You had to put in long hours in order to get these skills. And so it's being disrespectful of your skill and of your knowledge for you to just give it away. God does not give you these talents for you to do nothing for. He doesn't give it to you for you to hide, but he also doesn't give it to you for you to give it away, right? You're supposed to get a return. You're supposed to get a return on your investment, right? That was what happened with the people with the talents. He gave these people talents, and when he came back, he said, "Where's my return?" And the one who had no return, he was very upset with them. You are supposed to have a return on that investment. And so you need to make sure you get that across in a very nice way, nice professional way. And if you don't start that kind of a habit, I think it works out better for you. Don't start the habit. Don't start none, won't be none. Okay. And the self-saboteurs. This is a lot of women that I know. They procrastinate, they job hunt, they job hop. So they go from place to place to place. They never really put down any roots. They never really get anything solid on their resume. They sort of just go wherever people think that they should go. They put everybody's needs before theirs. And again, they're unwilling to be uncomfortable. You sometimes have to take a risk and you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. You also have to know your worth. When you go and you apply for a position, the initial offer is usually never the highest offer. Once they make you an offer, very often you can counter offer with a higher rate, especially if they're offering you less than what you were previously making. Don't just accept it because they offered it. Counter offer, because that additional 5, 10, 15, $20,000 is money that you will have left on the table. Not only that, every year when you get your increase, it's a percentage of that amount. So you just, what you're losing is being compounded every single year. And you can stay with a job for 5 and 10 years, especially if you're someone who likes to dig in and be comfortable. And you have left all of that money on the table for, the company to have their next Christmas party. And for what? For what? And you have not solidified your future. And you could have used that money, that extra $10,000, $15,000 to solidify your own future. So being an under earner is not about being lazy. Being an under earner is about being unwilling to be uncomfortable and being unwilling to have, sometimes hard conversations. And sometimes that is something that we have to do. Okay. So that was really what I wanted to get across about being an under earner. Now, the money tips that we have here are very, very simple. These are things that everybody can do. Read a basic book on personal finance. I'm glad you're here at this webinar. Make sure that you follow the advice. Think and Grow Rich is a classic. There are other books that are classic. Look them up, see what speaks to you. Make sure you read it. Make sure you follow the examples. Create a spending plan. They used to call it a budget. Now people don't like that. It's like a 4-letter word. So they say spending plan. Just like with diets, nobody says diets anymore. They say a meal plan or eating plan. We want to make sure, it's so important. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in this webinar. It's very, very important that you create a spending plan. And it's simple. It doesn't have to be, a 10-page Excel spreadsheet. It could be something very, very simple, but you have to get a handle on how much you're spending. You have to get a grip on where your money goes from month to month. And you have to look at your statements. If you have credit cards, make sure you look at your statements every month. If you have your checking account that you use as for your debit card, make sure you look at those statements every month, because there are charges that will pop up that will be from nowhere, and you have to investigate. You have to get them off. People lose money every single month because they don't look at their statements well enough. You have subscriptions to things that you stopped reading 6 months ago, but the subscription amount still pops up. And you could have a 6-month subscription. So that subscription amount only comes up every 6 months. And if you're not looking at your statements, you'll miss it. You'll miss it, not even realizing that that, as a matter of fact, that subscription is like 2 apartments ago, and you don't even know where the magazine is going. So make sure you look at your bank statements. Make sure you create a spending plan so you'll know where your money's going. Okay. Reduce debt and avoid adding to it. Okay. So debt is something that stops us from getting traction in our finances, because as soon as we start to pull out, we don't have enough savings. And so if something happens where we need cash, it automatically goes to debt. And we are constantly having to pay for yesterday's purchase, and it really eats into our future savings, because the money we're paying towards debt service, we could be investing and we could be allowing to make money off of it for us. So the one thing we do want to do is definitely reduce our debt. There's some debt that's not so bad. And I know that a lot of the financial gurus, the Dave Ramseys, they decry debt. Debt is terrible. You should never have debt. You should buy your house in cash, car in cash. All your major purchases should be in cash. I'm not necessarily of that mindset. I think that you can absolutely have some debt and some good debt. Most people that I know who are wealthy do have debt. I don't know a lot of uber wealthy people who have zero debt. They have some debt along the line, because they're always leveraging debt in order to buy more assets. And we talk about that in my slightly more advanced class when we do our 12-week complete money makeover. So I don't want to get into like leveraging debt here, but suffice it to say that I don't think that all debt is bad debt. Some debt is okay, but you don't want it to be consumer debt. You don't want it to be credit card debt, because that's just no good for anybody. Who wants to be paying for a pair of jeans for 7 and 8 years? It's ridiculous. All right, begin investing as soon as possible. I don't think I said this probably 8 times already, and I've only been with you for 20 minutes. Invest, invest, invest. You need to get that money and have it start working for you as soon as possible. Use the greatest leverage you have is time, and that is for all of us. Time is our friend. We have the power of compounding. So even small investments can grow to incredible sums if given enough time. Make sure you educate yourself about stocks, about bonds, about commodities. If you are good with like Forex trading, if you're good with cryptocurrency, I say it could be a great way to make money, because there are not a lot of people who understand it. I am one of those people. I don't invest in things that I don't know exactly how I make my return and what those I need. And I also need my investments to be sort of backed by something. Like, I understand investing in the stock market, that it's backed by the companies that I am investing in. I don't understand about cryptocurrency. I don't understand what it's backed by. And I don't understand this whole wallet where it only exists online. I don't understand it, so I don't invest in it. But if that is something that you understand, and you get how to mine, and you understand how to invest in foreign currencies, and that is like your thing, then I say go for it. Again, if you have increased your knowledge base and you can figure out a way to zero in on that knowledge and make it work for you, go for it. I mean, there are people who are really getting rich on it, and it's those people who know. They're the pioneers. The pioneers are always the one who get rich. The people who go in first, either they get rich or they lose everything. Generally, they make money. Even when it comes to neighborhoods, they go into the rough neighborhoods. The people who kind of revitalize it, they're the ones. They buy a house when it's worth nothing because it was just a pile of rubble, and then all of a sudden, the city starts investing, and now it's worth millions of dollars. So it's usually the pioneers who get rich. So use that to your advantage. Okay, more money tips. Okay, so take advantage of tax-deferred retirement accounts. So these are like your 401ks at work. Definitely jump in. Again, I told you earlier, if you have it at your job, make sure that you invest in it. Make sure you're a part of the plan. Make sure you at least invest up until your company gives you your match, because you don't want to leave that money on the table. And if you leave your job, do a direct rollover. Do not take that money in your hand. Do not allow them to cash you out, because you don't want to be playing with that money. If you do not do a direct rollover, there is a potential for a taxable event happening. And if it does trigger that taxable event and you eventually end up rolling it over, you're going to have a whole problem having to deal with the IRS, and nobody wants those problems. We got enough on our plate without having to get into a fight with the IRS. So just do a direct rollover. Don't touch that money at all. Pretend it doesn't exist. Unless you are in some kind of like grave hardship, don't ever touch your retirement money, because it's very, very, very easy to start peeling it away. There's all kinds of penalties attached. Not all kinds. There's a 10% penalty if you're not 59 and a half. So you want to just leave it there. Remember, time. So if that money if you don't need it, and I mean need it, like you're going to be, in a shelter, or, terrible things are going to happen to you if you don't have that money, leave it where it is. Oh, but if you leave your job, make sure you transfer it to an IRA. I would not leave my money with an old employer unless their funds are doing like spectacularly well. Then I might consider leaving it. Other than that, it's better to have all your money working for you in one place. Every time I leave a job, I set up an account at Fidelity, and every time I leave a job, which is more often than I care to admit, I'm not really a job person. I'm an entrepreneurial person, but I keep getting jobs because people keep telling me about these amazing jobs, and people see me and say, you know what, you should work for us. And I'm like, oh, it sounds great. And then I get there and I'm like, this office, these 4 walls of these offices killing me. But anyway, I digress. So yeah, take your money with you when you leave. send it to Vanguard, send it to Fidelity, send it to somebody's investment house, open up an IRA and keep it moving. You don't want no ties to previous jobs if you can help it. Then you forget, you move around and, nobody wants all that. So if you don't have access to a 401k, so if you're like me and I don't have a workplace 401k because, I'm a solopreneur, then open up an IRA. It's super simple. I think you can put like 25 bucks in, and just as long as you do it auto, you don't have to put in massive amounts of dollars. And then you get a tax deduction at the end of the year. So you're winning. Secure your health insurance. Listen, no country has higher medical costs than the United States. That's why so many people go outside of the US when they have medical procedures. I know I myself went to Mexico to get my teeth done because the dentist here was talking crazy. So I had to get out. But because of this, people will file for bankruptcy. And they'll file for bankruptcy because they have outrageously high medical expenses. And I get it. You don't know if you're going to be diagnosed with some kind of a terminal disease. You don't know if you are going to have, a heart attack. You don't know when these things will happen. So make sure you have health insurance. That will, as a matter of fact, that's another one of the modules in my 12-week course is insurance, because, health insurance is one, because theoretically you could, step off a curb, break your leg and go bankrupt. That's if you don't have health insurance. That's just how expensive it is for you to have, some kind of and that's a broken leg. Forget about if you are diagnosed with HIV positive, or if you all of a sudden have, health. What if you get coronavirus? What if you get coronavirus and you're on a ventilator for X number of weeks or months? You know how much that costs? And they come for you. They absolutely come for you. And if you don't have health insurance, you could be forced to go bankrupt. And nobody really, it's a terrible, terrible way to have to file for bankruptcy. We did talk about the high deductible high deductible health plan. And the health savings account, amazing. And this says you'll be eligible for HAS. It should be a HSA. I have to change that because that health savings account is amazing. It does go triple tax free. If you don't have it, definitely look into it. Especially if you're relatively healthy, it's really amazing. I can't speak highly enough of the high deductible plan or the HSA. Okay, so all right, we're going to go into spending plan. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. So we're going to get into spending plans. And I want you to make sure you keep your tent doors wide open, because this is a really important part of this whole kind of pie, right? We have one whole pie, and you have to make sure you get all of the pieces together in order for, that pie to be full. So having a spending plan is going to be super important. I know nobody really likes to do it. I used to have to do it for my clients. I didn't even really like to do it. I didn't like to do it for them. I don't really like to do it for me. I do a 60% plan. So I'm gonna tell you what that is before I get into it. I take my income. I immediately save 20%. Oh, I actually 30%, because one goes into short-term savings, and then I do my retirement savings, long-term savings, right? So, and then I do emergency savings. So I really, because I'm an entrepreneur, I don't get paid a salary. So if times are great, I may get more money. If times are not so great, then I'm not going to get a lot of money. So I have to make sure that I save for those proverbial rainy days, because they come around a little bit more often when you are an entrepreneur. But I make sure now the other 60% are for my bills. And so I make sure that my rent, any kind of cable, cell phone, utilities, I make sure that all of that can be a part of that 60%, which is why I can't rent an apartment that's going to be, incredibly expensive. I'm not going to get, a full package of cable. I'm not going to get, so much more of what I need, because I have to make sure it fits within that 60%. So if you can't, then that means you're living above your means. If your rent eats up 80%, 70% of your income, you are in too expensive of a place. And so you need to downsize, and you may need to get a roommate. You have to do something so that there is a gap between your income and your expenses, because you have to be able to save some money. You have to. And that's the only way that this whole wealth building journey will work for you. You have to create some space in between your income and your expenses. If it comes in one door and all goes out the next door, then that is a problem that has to be addressed first. There's no sense in you moving forward towards debt and insurance and investing and all of the other things that I have for you if you don't have that spending plan in place and if you are not keeping your expenses down. So I'm going to go back to sharing the screen, but I came out of here just so that I could specifically tell you that you must create that space. You must create that gap. All right. So let's go back to a spending plan that will serve you, because that's what the spending plan does. The spending plan is there to work for you. It's not there to tell you no. The spending plan is not there to say you cannot have this. The spending plan is to say, okay, you can have this, you can have this, and you can't have this. You may not be able to have all of it at one time. You may be able to have this now, and if you want that, it has to wait for next month. Or if you want to do or go or somehow be, then you may have to save up incrementally until you can get that lump sum of money, and then you'll be able to do it. I don't want your first go-to to be credit cards. I don't want the first thing you think of when you say, oh, I want this, to all of a sudden be, well, I don't have the cash for it, so I'm going to put it to credit card. That's where the spending plan comes into place, because you have to somehow get yourself into not jumping into the immediate gratification. You have to recognize the value in long-term planning. And again, most of that is things that I really dig into during our 12-week course, because we spend a lot of time on the psychology of money. Because if you don't get past your thinking, your mindset, then everything else will be nothing more than a short-term plan. Like a diet that you can go on for like 3 weeks, and then your willpower runs out, and then you automatically eating cookies. That's because you haven't changed your mind frame. And so I could give you a spending plan. I can give you a beautiful Excel. I could color code it. I could put the formulas in so that everything automatically calculates for you. And all you have to do is put in your paycheck numbers, and I could tell you everything else. But that'll only work for you as long as you have changed your mind frame into one that will appreciate the fact that we're going to be doing this for the long haul. Wealth building is not something that we're doing for tomorrow. Wealth building is something that we're doing, again, for not even for us for tomorrow or next year or next 5 years. It's for our future. It's for our children's children. Remember, wealth is generational. Wealth is that thing that we're going to be passing down. And so that's why the steps we take today are going to help our grandkids and our great grandkids. Just keep that in mind. So this is about having a spending plan, and it'll do all these things. So, take a screenshot of this. This will, give you that self-control, reduce your debt. Spending plans will help you get your financial life in some kind of orderly place, right? That's what having a spending plan will do. Now, in order to create it, you must list your sources of income. And that means we want to make sure you list your gross income. I don't want you to list, I know a lot of people are lazy. They put their take-home pay in, but I want you to make sure you put your gross in, because we want to keep an eye on what your tax rate is, because that becomes very important as you shift from being an employer to being an employee to potentially being a business owner and an employer. So we want to also always keep that in the back of our mind, because most people, they don't think about tax. They're just like, whatever. And we want to also look at whether you get big refunds at the end of the year, because that's something we can adjust during the year as well. But again, I digress. So we're looking at your recurring, one-time, flexible expenses. Look through 3-4 months of your bank statements, because there are some charges that are bi-monthly. Most charges are monthly: rent, utilities. Some gas companies are 3 months, every 2 months or something, but we want to make sure that we capture everything. We want to capture, insurance payments. There are payments that are annual. So we want to make sure we have those in our budget as well, and that they don't catch us sort of unaware. I had a client who had insurance policy that was once a year, but it was $144,000. So we definitely needed to make sure that we put that in his budget. We had to budget for that monthly, so that when April came and that $144,000 was due, we had that cash on hand. I mean, it really is the only way to make sure that you're going to have the cash available for the things that you know you need to have the cash available for. Just like people take their car in for major maintenance and major repairs. You know, we don't get our car repaired every month, but we do know that it will happen. And so that's why we make sure that we put money away monthly so that when that eventuality happens, we'll have a plan for it. Make sure we have our priorities in place and include your savings as a priority because it is. Usually people save what they have left over. We want to do it the reverse way. We want to save first and then spend what's left. All right, that's the only way that we'll ensure that we'll have enough for savings. You want to make sure, I mean, I can't stress it enough. People, when Corona first came and people were losing their jobs left and right, they realized how important it was to have an emergency fund. Nobody ever thinks they need an emergency fund until they have an emergency. That's when everybody starts running, screaming, wondering where they're going to get money. Even a lot of my clients who were not really cash flow positive, i.e., they didn't have any money. So when this came, and I worked in music, so all of my clients are touring artists and they tour in order to make money. And so when touring stopped, you know, the money stopped, the bag completely stopped, but, you know, mortgages still had to be paid. Salaries still had to be paid. You know, children still had to go to their schools, which were, you know, there's private schools. And so they needed to, their tuition still needed to be paid. You know, there are you know, you don't stop eating just because you lost your job. So there needed to be money. And rather than having to now start selling things, you know, especially for cash poor clients, they were looking at, you know, lines of credit. And lines of credit are terrible to have to get when you need it. A line of credit is something that you need to have in place before you need it, because once you stop making an income, you go to the bank and say, I need a line of credit. They want to know how to go get their money back. You now have no income. So they will be much more hesitant to give you a line of credit when you need it. You have to get that kind of thing in place before. It's like insurance. You know, you don't wait until you have a diagnosis in order to go get insurance. You have to have that in place before. So make savings I said all of that to say, please make savings a priority and make sure you review your spending plan regularly. It's a living, breathing document, so it changes. Rents change every day, increase, maybe sometimes they decrease. You know, cell phone plans change, you may get a new phone. You know, life, you know, there are ebbs and there are flows when it comes to your expenses, and things will change over, you know, the course of a year. You know, you may change jobs and your whole income changes. You may get, you know, I don't know, whatever could happen could happen. So make sure you are not looking at the same spending plan and without making the correct adjustments. And if you find that there is a bucket or two that doesn't really reflect what you think it is, because most people, they put in their spending plan what they think they'll spend. And, you know, especially when it comes to like eating out or entertainment. So right now, people's entertainment budgets are really low because there is no entertainment. There's no more movies. There's no going out. You know, there's no real vacations. People are not vacationing, but their groceries are through the roof because we are staying home and we are eating. We are going from room to kitchen to room to kitchen to room to kitchen to room to kitchen, back and forth, especially if we are now working from home. We're all home. We're home. Kids is home. Everybody's home. So everybody's home. Everybody's eating. You know, we're eating 3 meals at home now. We used to maybe eat one. Right. So now we have to like make allowances for that. So, you know, those are the things that can throw our spending plan out of whack. And we need to make sure that we make allowances for that. So I wanted to stop sharing because I did want to tell you how the coronavirus has really affected our spending, what we spend on. It affects us in ways. I mean, besides the many millions of people who've lost their jobs completely due to the coronavirus, those people who have their jobs are under that much more stress because they have that much more work. They are at risk of being exposed to the coronavirus because they still have a job. Our spending, most of the time we have to buy more supplies, you know, more food. We are spending on, you know, everything is much more expensive. You know, Purell is through the roof. We have to have gloves. We have to have masks, you know. everything that we do now is different, and we don't really have the outlets that we used to have. You know, we don't have the entertainment aspect of life anymore. So we really need to make sure that we're good to ourselves while we're here. And I know that I talk about money, but there are also self-care things that we need to keep an eye on, because we don't want to neglect self-care to pad our spending plan so that we can fund our retirement. You know, we don't want to neglect, the same way that I talked to you about not wanting to neglect your friendships, your family relationships, so that you can save money. You also don't want to neglect your self-care. You don't want to neglect taking care of yourself. You don't want to neglect spending times with your sister girls. You don't want to neglect your time in prayer. You don't want to neglect those things that bring you peace, peace to your mental status. You don't want to neglect your relationships with the Father, just as well as you don't want to neglect your relationships with your spouse, your children, your family, or your friends. All right. So remember, even as much as I talk about spending plan and making sure you're getting your spending under control, you don't want to neglect those things that really mean something to you. You know, they talked about the latte factor a couple of years ago, and I know that most of you will remember that. They said if you didn't buy that latte every day, you could be a millionaire. And I was like, really? And they were like, yes. One latte at Starbucks is like $4 and change. If you took that $4 and invested it, you know, over multiple years, you could have like all of this money. And I was like, you know what? And it wasn't like $1 million. It was something like, I don't know, $20,000, $30,000, which is a good sum of money for a latte every morning. The problem is that latte could be saving lives. That latte could be that one thing that sets your day off right, that brings you joy, that helps make your morning smoother, because everybody is not a morning person. And so if you have that latte, that could help make your transition to work so much better. And so you don't want to negate those things. You don't want to neglect those things and pretend they don't matter because you want to save an extra $20,000 over your lifetime, right? You don't want to sacrifice what's working in your life because you want to attain a level of savings that would now make that life not as much fun. Right? I mean, I could save an extra 20 grand without my lattes, but then my life wouldn't be that much fun. You know, it wouldn't be great. And those people on my job, well, when I had a 9 to 5, they wouldn't have been able to stand me. I would have been in morning meetings, and they love to call meetings at 8:30 in the morning. I would have been in the meeting half sleep. So that latte worked for me. So if a latte works for you, girlfriend, keep at it. If it works for you, have at it. If you can sacrifice it and maybe switch to something else, bring your coffee from home, then that's good too. But if you need those things, if you need to work off your anxiety or work off your stress at the gym, I don't see where, you know, a 10 or 15 or $20 a month membership at Planet Fitness or Blink or whatever it is going to, it makes your quality of life great. There are people who will sacrifice all of the creature comforts in order to save. And I get it. But I also think that, you know, you want to make your life bearable, more than bearable. You want your life to be enjoyable. I want to enjoy my life. I don't want to sacrifice so much that my life becomes a chore. So when you're making out your budget, resist the temptation to strip it of everything that makes life fun. Resist stripping it of everything that allows you to take care of yourself. You know, don't strip it so much that now you have to live in a shadow of what you used to live. Okay. So I just want to make that clear when we're talking about spending. Make sure you get rid of superfluous things you don't need, subscriptions to magazines you don't read anymore, memberships to gyms where you haven't been in months. But make sure you keep those things that you really use and that you really enjoy. All right. I'm going to share my screen one more time because I know you don't want to spend the next 15, 20 minutes looking at me. So we're going to go and we're going to get to the next thing. Okay. So we talked about that. Now we're going to look tips for success. Okay, I think that you all are kind of going to have an idea that these are ways to make sure that your spending plan works for you and you're not so much working for it. You know, be mindful of your impulse spending. That always usually gets me down. That's why I don't go to places like Marshall's. I don't go to places like Walmart too much because I'm a big impulse buyer. I go to places like that for one thing, come out with 15 other things that I don't need. It's just my eyes, it's lust of the eye. I see it, and all of a sudden, things that I didn't even know existed. I go in and I'm like, oh, this is a marshmallow maker upper whacker thing. I need it. And I'm like, I didn't even know that wasn't even a thing until I just saw it a second ago. But all of a sudden, it's something that I can't do without. So be mindful of the way that you spend, right? Because we're all different. So be mindful of the way you spend and find ways to go around it. Find ways to cut down your expenses. We talked about that. Set goals that will help you stick to your budget. We talked about that. We talked about the visualization. You may want to have a vision board. You want to make sure you keep that why. You know, that's another thing that we go over in our 12-week plan, solidifying your why, right? Once you get your why firmly in place, you know, the why you do this. Are you doing it for, so that you, are you saving? Are you putting away money? Are you investing so that you can retire at 50, so that you can buy that, your dream house, so that you can, you know, take care of your grandkids, so that you can retire and maybe travel the world? Once we firmly get that why in place, then you can withstand any how. The how is the least of your problem when you firmly have that why in your mind. So make sure you get those goals together so that you can stick to that budget. Use an app or a tool to track your spending. You know, they have tools like Chime. They have that's for like savings. They have a tool called Robinhood. They have a tool called Digits. They have so many apps now where you can save, where you can invest, and they, you know, I dare say they make it fun. You know, they make saving and investing like a game that you can play with yourself. You know, like, let's see if how my returns are. Just if you lose a little bit of money, don't kill yourself. Don't jump off a roof, and don't then take all your money out of the market. There are going to be minor ebbs and flows. There, you know, it's a wave. It goes up, it goes down. So there are fluctuations in the market. If you are doing your research, then you will be mindful of those things and you don't look at it. Only when you start, and I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent again. This is why I got to keep an agenda and a set of notes so that I can focus. Because if you are my age, right, I'm 53. So I have to be very mindful of what my investments are doing, because my timeline is not as long as it was when I was 25, right? I'm going to need my money in the next 15 years or so. So I don't have, you know, 30, 40 years to recoup any losses. And so I want to be mindful of what my investments are doing. If I was 20 though, my son is 24, the money that he has invested, he can kind of sort of set it and forget it, as long as he's got it in quality companies, and he's got mutual funds that perform well and that are managed well. Set reminders to pay your bill on time. I cannot tell you how much this will affect your credit. Late payments are a very big factor in why people have bad credit. Most people are not just, I'm never going to pay my bills. Most people just are very like lackadaisical when it comes to paying on the due date. And they assume that they have all these grace periods that they don't have. So set a reminder to pay your bills on time. I know you probably hear this. I live about 4 blocks away from a highway, and you would be amazed at how clear horns honk. And I'm living in New York, by the way, so there's like lots of traffic all the time. So you might hear a little bit of honking here and there. Just pretend you don't hear it like I do. Anyway, set those reminders to pay your bills on time. Write it down, send yourself an email, make sure that there is some way you can set it up so that you know 5 days in advance when your bills are due. And if you don't have auto pay at this point, I mean, what are you living? Back in the 90s? Auto pay is your friend, especially for credit cards, especially just for the minimums. Okay, so we want to always pay more than the minimum for credit cards. However, if you're leery about auto pay, make sure you put it on for just the minimum. This way, at least you know you won't get a late payment penalty. You can always add to it. You can always make another payment, but just make sure the minimums are covered so that you don't get hit with late payment penalties. And that happens, especially if you're someone who like still mails your bills. Important long-term goals: home ownership, retirement savings, entrepreneurship, debt payoff, college savings. These are all goals that are going to take 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. These are all things that we save for the long haul. We have also short-term goals, raising your credit score so that you can then buy that house, upgrading your insurance, emergency savings, car down payments, an upcoming vacation. These are all short-term goals, things that are going to happen within 2 years that you want to see, you putting money away for. So we want to make sure we distinctly separate them so that you are not maybe using your household fund that you're trying to save for a house and you're using that for a vacation or a down payment on a car. We want to make sure that we're specific and that we are strategic in how we save and that we save for specific things. I know that it's easy for you to just have a savings account and for you to just put money in a savings account without really specifying what this savings is for. But I tell you, if you can have like a bank, online banks are probably better for this than banks in the city, because I had a bank attached to my checking account and they wanted to charge me, I think, like $5 a month for maintenance. And I was like, why am I paying to save money? It doesn't make sense. But then I got an online bank, and Ally Bank, as a matter of fact. Ally Bank is my online bank. And they don't charge at all to save money. And you could actually have buckets, right? You can say, well, I have $15,000 in my savings account, and 7,500 is for this, 2,000 is for that. You can actually specify what that savings is for. So you'll always know if you're getting close to your goal, if you've hit your goal. If you're saving, $2,500 because that's a vacation, once you hit $2,500, now you can double time it on, another savings goal, maybe a longer term goal. Maybe you want to add that extra money to your house. Whatever it is, you can do it. You can, this is all about being intentional. We're breaking it down into, having buckets for savings, but the bigger picture is that we want you to be intentional with your spending, and we want you to be intentional with your savings. So managing debt is another really huge issue. Like I said, it keeps you from really gaining traction in your finances. And listen, here's a quote from Proverbs: "The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is the slave of the lender." And how true is that? The rich rule over the poor, borrower is always slave. As long as you owe someone money, you're pretty much a slave to them. I mean, and it's something that we want to get out of. And I'm specifically talking about commercial debt. I am not talking about mortgages. So, I mean, even in that case, you're still, I mean, your house is still not your house, but you are building equity. So every time you make a mortgage payment, you are building equity in that house. Paying a credit card payment, all you're doing is owning something that probably depreciated in the value as soon as you wore it or as soon as you took it off the lot. Anyway, moving forward. People end up with credit woes for one of two reasons, right? One, they either don't have enough savings to weather financial issues, or two, they have more debt than their income can support. So if you're in credit card trouble, then that means that you had no savings, so that every time something happens, your car breaks down, your heater breaks, somebody is in I don't want to say somebody dies because I don't want to put that on anybody, but there's something happens and you have to travel a distance. You don't have enough available savings to cover those things, and so they automatically go on a credit card. And so you constantly are racking up credit card debt. So you need to get your save. That's why we're so, focused on savings, because you can actually save your way out of debt. Because as you're paying down your debt, you're saving so that when these, financial issues pop up, you can go to your short-term savings rather than relying on credit. Or you have more debt than your income can support. So there are people, and this is what happened in the meltdown, the housing crisis. People who were giving these janky mortgages to people who don't make any money. So when the housing bubble burst, they could no longer afford their mortgage payments because their payments were more than their income could support. Why, as a homeowner, you would say, yes, I will take a mortgage that is twice my income? I'll never know. Or what they did was they promised you these balloon payments. They said, you know what, your mortgage is going to be ever so low. And then, but in 5 years, there's going to be like a $2 million balloon payment. Now, how many average people can afford that? They assume that you'll be able to refinance within that. But in any event, you don't want more debt. So now you've got a mortgage, you've got a car note, you've got credit card debt, you've got maybe some student loans thrown in there. You've got more debt than you can sustain with the current level of income you have. And so now you end up in credit card trouble, because and if anything should happen, even if you were just making it, if anything should happen, it throws you off entirely, and now something suffers. Something won't get paid. So most people will pay their mortgage. Most people will pay their car note. Credit cards are the last. Student loans end up being the last. So, we have to make sure that we understand the difference between our needs, our wants, between our assets and our liabilities, between what is a real emergency and what is just another bill. We want to make sure that we are very, very clear on these things, and they can be different for different people. What could potentially be a need for you is a want for me. And what could potentially be an emergency for me is not an emergency for you. So we just have to make sure that we're all clear on what our needs are, and what we're doing and why we're doing it, right? The biggest thing is why, because we want to be here. We want to have assets. We want to bring this down. We want to understand what each of these things are so that we know what their proper place in our lives are. So that we don't end up in deep, deep credit card woes. And I know that we more often buy out of emotional need than we do out of a physical need. It just is us as human beings, because we've all gone through, money is one of the most difficult things to teach financial literacy, because people come to the table, and I'll look at you when I say this. Hi. So financial literacy is really difficult to teach because people come to the table with their money issues and their money scripts and the emotions they have tied to money already firmly implanted in their mind, right? If I'm going to teach you social studies, if I'm going to teach you about, an Egyptian war, you're going to come to me a blank slate, and then I just impart knowledge to you. When I'm teaching you about financial literacy, I am brushing up against your preconceived ideas already. I am brushing up against something that you have been doing and what's become a habit for you for, 20, 30, 40 years. And it may be difficult for you to accept what I'm saying to you because you've been playing these things out so much. And I'm going to give you an example that I gave to the people that I was talking to a couple of weeks ago about my own spending. I can be an emotional spender. So if something happens, I'll need some retail therapy. I need to go out and I do a lot of window shopping, but I do end up buying. I don't buy a lot, but anytime you buy for an emotional reason, you have to start checking your insides. You have to start checking what's going on with you, because you don't need it. I also am someone who has an overflow. I'm not a hoarder. So, because I've heard that word thrown around, but I'm not a hoarder. What I will do though is the things that I like, I feel like I need to be secure that I will have them going forward. So let me just throw it out there. Let me give you an example so that you know what I'm talking about. So I have a favorite conditioner that I love that works on my hair. My hair is smooth as butter. So when it goes on sale or Black Friday comes, because it's relatively expensive, Black Friday comes, I'm buying quite a few of them because I feel like I need them. When it comes to things like that I like, bath salts that I love to throw in the tub, things that I really like, you will see I have a closet and I will have them stacked up. I don't know that I'd have like 10, 15 of them, but I surely got 5 or 6 or 7. And if something is going to be, the formula is going to be changed, because they have formula changes, and the new formulas never work the way that the old ones did. I've been known to clear a shelf or two. So, but that all comes from living a childhood of lack. And like I said, it was lack. It wasn't abject poverty. It wasn't to say that we had nothing to eat, or it was in any kind of a way where we were living like in a shelter or something, or we didn't have food, because it wasn't that bad. But what it was that I never was secure that I would have access to the things that I wanted. And that it's as simple as that. I was never sure that I would have access to it. So as an adult, the things that I like, I make sure that I have access to it. And it's generally nothing gigantic. It's just certain things that I really like. But it's spending out of an emotional place, right? It's spending out of an emotional place. And so you want to get those kinds of spending habits under control. And it's also wise for you to understand the scripts that you're reading from when you're dealing with money, because we all have money scripts that we act out. Some of us believe that money is bad, and you find that a lot in spiritual spaces where because usually the bad guys in movies are always the rich guys, like the Scrooges and, money bags. They're always the rich people who could care less about the poor people, and they step, even our current administration. We talk about our current president, who is, I don't think he's rich, but he portrays himself to be a rich person. And there is this kind of rich versus poor or classist kind of attitude that comes forth. And that is what most people feel, like he does not care about people who are not on his socioeconomic level. And so we ascribe this negative feeling to people who are rich. And if you ascribe a negative association to people who are rich, then how are you ever going to be rich? In the back of your mind, you think rich people are bad. And so you will not, you will not ascribe to being wealthy, because you really do play out that script. And so we have to look at those scripts. Some people believe that money will confer status, that if you have, X amount of dollars, then you are better than other people, that you are better than the people who are, down the road from you, who don't make as much as you, that somehow you got it and they don't. And these are the money scripts. These are money scripts that we come up across against every day, and we play them out in our minds. Either we're better, either we're not as good. We put a lot of things on money that shouldn't be. Money means more than just a tool, right? Money is that thing I take out of my wallet when I go to the store, and I give it to you, and you give me what I want. But no, we attach feelings of love to money. So we think that if we have money, or we give money, then people will love us more, right? Or in the opposite, if you love me, you will give me money. And so we operate in that script as well. We also use money for power. And I know a lot of people who do that. They hold money and they use it as a whip against the people in their lives in order to get what they want. So, if you come see me, then I'll give you money. If you do what I want you to do, then I'll give you money. But if you stop for any reason doing what I want you to do, then I'm going to cut you off, and I'm not going to give you anything. And it's a joke that people in my previous job, they would say, because they were all rich people, and they would be like, if I'm gonna cut him out of my will, or call my lawyer, because you're not getting anything. And that was the threat. The threat was to the people around them was that I'm going to cut you off. I'm not going to give you anything. And, at some point, people who are not controlled by money say, fine, keep your money. I'm leaving. And now you're stuck, because that was never your intention. You feel as though you're going to control them, and they're going to buckle down to your whims because you have this money. But 9 times out of 10, it doesn't work, unless you're dealing with somebody who is okay with being controlled by money, or who doesn't have the resources and now they need it. But they will not, it does not make them love you. It makes them actually resent you. So, but that's a whole nother thing that we get into when it comes to psychology of money. All right, let me go back to sharing my screen so you can see what I'm talking about now. Okay, so we talked about credit and money. We talked about, this is a brief sort of a quick how your credit score is calculated. So your payment history, that's what we were talking about earlier. 35% of your credit score is based on your timely payments. That's why I said, make sure you put some type of a reminder so that you won't be paying your credit card bills late. And try to not use any grace periods, because what happens is, things are due on the first. Say it's due on the first. I don't know when your credit card payment is due, but say it's due on the first. And they give you a grace period to the 5th. Okay. So now in your head, my credit card payment is due on the 5th. So, because that's how we are, right? With people, we want to take as much time as we possibly can. So now you're waiting, and say you get paid on the 4th, but something happens to your paycheck. You don't get that money. So now the 5th comes around, you can't make your payment. If you would have used the paycheck before and paid it by the 1st, if you'd have kept that 1st in your mind, your credit card would have been paid. So just try not to let it run down to the last second, because things can always happen. All right. And that's pretty much it. And again, 30% of your credit score is based on your credit utilization. Try to keep your utilization down below 30% of your available credit. So if you have $10,000 credit limit, say the bank says, I'm gonna give you a credit card, but you can only have $10,000. Try to keep your spending below $3,000. If you start going above 30%, it affects your credit score, because the matrix says that now you need credit to live on. Credit is supposed to be something that kicks in case you have like in case you have an emergency, or, in case. It shouldn't be something you live on, which is why people shouldn't be dragging credit throughout their lives, right? You shouldn't have a credit debt, a credit card debt of, $6,000 and $7,000, and you dragging that debt for years and years and years. At some point, it should be paid up, or you have too much debt. You just can't afford it. So yeah, keep your utilization below 30% of your available credit, and make sure you pay your bills on time. 15% of your score is based on how long your accounts have been open. So I have an account that's a $500 limit that I've had since I was, I think, 21. I think it was the first card I ever got. It was a, what do you call it? Like collateralized credit card. So I gave them $500 and they gave me a credit card, and they opened up a savings account for me. And because I didn't have credit, and this was how I build credit. But I had it when I was like 21 years old. It was all good. And now I have, regular credit cards, but I keep that credit card open because I've had it open for so long. And that bodes well for my credit score, because it says, hey, good job, girl. You've been able to manage and maintain this credit for, 20 years. You're doing great. As opposed to newer credit that you've only had for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. That doesn't show. You want the longest history available. So even if I didn't use this account, which I do, and by the way, I only have 2 credit cards that I use. That $500 card I use for my, whatever. I want a pair of shoes. I want a pair of lotion. I want some lotion. I want this. I want that, because I try to keep my spending at that level. The other card has a $20,000 limit, and I use that for major emergencies. I use that for vacations, and I use that for business expenses when I want to split that aside. Although I think I'm going to get a separate business, because they don't like you to be they don't like for you to be mixing business and personal. So I think I'm going to get another business card, but in any event. So yeah, and your types of credit, they like to see different types of credit. So in your credit score, they don't want you to see just credit cards. They would like for you to see a mortgage. They would like to see maybe an auto loan. They would like to see maybe a credit card. They want to see like a mix of different types of credit to show how you handle your credit. But I mean, I wouldn't go running out getting a whole bunch of credit just to get that mix. I mean, I don't see where more credit is better if you don't need it. Get what you need. Don't get something because they said you should have it. Get what you need. Because at the end of the day, once your credit is like 740-ish, over 720, 730, 740, you're good. Your credit's excellent. Having 800 credit is something that is like an ego boost, right? Having 8, I knew one person who had, I think, 840, almost 850. And I don't know how she did it. I cracked 8 once, and I was just like, whew, that was rough. But I don't know. As long as you're above 720, 750, your credit is good. I mean, I don't know that you need to keep killing yourself to get 850. I mean, I don't know what good it does. I mean, it's great to have great credit. And again, if your credit is excellent, it's excellent. Whether it's excellent at 800, excellent at 820, excellent at 840, it's all still excellent. Okay. Eliminating your debt. So let me just say this. People got really in the sites that I go to, people really argue over the best way to eliminate debt. It is not even that difficult. You can either choose the card with the highest interest rate or the card with the lowest amount due. It's either or. It's you, and they both work. It's what makes you feel best. It's what makes you feel better. They both work. Let me say that one more time. It both works. So there's no reason to spend a lot of time figuring out which one I want to use. Just pick the one that feels right to you. Because either way, we're reducing our debt. So either way, we're on the right track. All right. Okay. So let's share this for you one more time before we get into it, because I wanted to make that one really clear. So there are two strategies, and here they are. You pay the debt with the highest interest rate, or you pay the debt with the smallest balance. And these are the two ways to eliminate debt. Ogden Nash said it best. Some debts are fun when you're acquiring them, but none are fun when you set about retiring them. It's always fun accruing debt. Yes, I'll take that cruise. Yes, I will buy those jeans. Yes, 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 I'll take it. I'll take it. Pay now, pay now, pay now. But once it comes time to paying those debts, now I'm depressed, because now I have to pay $300, $400, $500, $600, $700 a month. And that vacation is long gone. Those jeans are now ripped and faded. All of the things I've used, all of the shampoos and conditioners, like, everything that you bought is now either old or used, but I'm still paying for it, months and months later. It's not a lot of fun. So this is what happens when you have debt. This is why we want to eliminate debt, because again, as long as we're making this much debt service payments, as long as we're paying this debt and we're paying so much of our income to debt, we really are not able to gain traction in our finances, because that's money we should be allocating to our savings. All right, so we're going to eliminate debt. So we've gone through the three main obstacles to wealth building. I mean, we have gone through over earning, under earning. I'm sorry, over earning. I wish I had that problem. We've gone through the habits of the under earner. We've gone through overspending. And now we've just finished with debt cycling, that constant cycle of debt, debt, debt. And so now we want to use these tips that we've shared now to create a financial future where wealth is the goal. Not, you know, I want to, we tend to have short-sighted goals, right? Our short-sighted goals are like, I want to set a goal. I want to go on vacation, or I want to, be able to afford these pair of, $500 shoes. We have those short-sighted goals. What we want to do is have the long view of what our goals are. We want wealth to be the goal, the accumulation of wealth, the accumulation of assets, and the reduction of our debt, the reduction of debt service payments. We want to start, making sure that we are spending for our children and our children's children. And we also want to make sure that we're putting all of these, amazing habits into our children's lives, and we're speaking good financial habits into our children's lives, because what happens is that they learn from us, the good and the bad. And they don't necessarily learn based on what we tell them. They learn based on what we show them. So if we're saying, sweetie pie, you need to save your money, you get your allowance, make sure you put 10% in the pot. We tithe 10%. And make sure you put another 10%, into your savings, so that, if you want to buy a toy, or you want to buy something special, you'll have it. Meanwhile, we don't follow our own advice. And they see us when we go out saying we're going to the store for milk and juice, and then we come back with bags and bags full of stuff. They see that and they think, you know what? We got here and she all of a sudden saw this and wanted it, and so she bought it. So that sits into their spirit, because kids pick up on what we do. They pick up on our intention. They pick up on who we are as people. So make sure that you're teaching them the lessons that you would have wanted to learn when you were their age, right? So, I mean, this is the end of my presentation. If you've gotten this far, thank you. You have gone through the entire presentation, and I absolutely appreciate it. If you would like more information, feel free to reach out to me. I am Teresa at IamTheServant.com. I'm going to leave all my information down below. There will be a place for you to click if you want to continue your journey toward wealth. If you want to work with me individually, I would be happy to work with you to figure out the blueprint to your own personal path to wealth, because they're all different. And they're all going to be based on your particular strengths and abilities, what you do well, what you do better than anyone else around you. We're going to zero in and we're going to hone into your specialties, and we're going to figure out your path. If you would like to take a course, if you really are just interested in reducing your debt, or if you really want to get into the psychology of money and maybe understand why you make the decisions that you make, then that's also a course that we can do. I am here for you. You know, God put this into my spirit a couple of years ago, and He told me specifically to work with women. I mean, I don't not work. I don't make it I don't specify that I refuse to work with men, but He called me to reach out to women specifically because He understands a lot of the I don't want to say burden, but a lot of the responsibility for household finances tends to fall on our shoulders. And so I am here to help you relieve some of that burden and to help you chart a path towards wealth and long-term sustainability in what you're doing. So that's it. And I look forward to talking to you all. And again, stop by my website if you want more information. IamTheServant.com. I would be happy to open up a dialogue, and I will see you next time. All right. Have a great day. Bye.